Hi, my name is Yulia, and you're watching my channel, Rebels and Revolutions. In our last episode, we talked about the Berlin Wall and how it came about. Now we're going to travel back to 1989 to witness the beginning of its demise, which, surprisingly, took place largely outside of Germany. Well, our third and last installment of this series will replay the final days of the GDR and the wall itself. The Berlin Wall collapse, or the Peaceful Revolution of 1989, is one of the most fascinating uprisings, and arguably one of the most important events in the 20th century. What can I tell you about this topic that you do not already know? Well, stay with me and you'll find out. Ever since the Soviet tanks rolled over the Hungarian uprisings in 1956, Hungarians had limited love for their Russian overlords. Even some of the communist elites were less than enthusiastic supporters of the Soviet-imposed bright communist future. Given their proximity and historical ties to Austria, they could clearly see the contrast between the two systems. Remember the old joke that while capitalism is the system of exploitation of man by man, socialism is the exact opposite? In the 1980s, countries within the Soviet orbit were hit hard by the collapse in oil prices, which went from almost $40 a barrel in the early 1980s to the high teens towards the end of that decade. Hungary was amongst the victims of this collapse. Common consumer goods, which were already hard to come by, practically disappeared from the shelves. Even the most basic food was rationed or had to be bought on the black market. And here is another piece of Eastern European humor reflecting this painful reality. Question: what would happen if the desert became a socialist country? Answer: nothing much for a while, and then they would run out of sand. People all over Eastern Europe were demanding reforms, and the ruling clique of the old communist guard in Hungary knew that they were powerless to change the situation. But they liked their Dachas and limousines very much, and were strongly in favor of holding on to their power. So they came up with a brilliant plan. They decided to appoint one of the young and naive reformers from the lower ranks of the Communist Party as the head of the government, or prime minister. People want reform, let them have it, they thought. If the chosen reformer fails, communists could always use him as a scapegoat. If he succeeds, not a chance. They could take all the credit.
And I'm reaping all the benefits.
And so, on November 24th of 1988, the Hungarian communist leaders promoted a largely unknown member of the Politburo by the name of Miklos Nemeth to become the Prime Minister of Hungary. Nemeth was a brilliant and slightly nerdy Harvard-educated economist who despised the communist system and was wishing for its destruction. Above all, he wanted Hungary to break away from the Warsaw Pact and rejoin Western Europe. Basically, he wanted to start a revolution. He surrounded himself with fellow reformers, such as Imre Poskoly, and set to work on burying communism. Curious fact, among their early actions was the rehabilitation of the victims of the 1956 uprising. They wanted to rebury the remains of the leader of that revolution, Imre Nagy, and his 4 companions, who were executed by the Soviet authorities in 1958. During Nagy's reinterment, which, by the way, was attended by almost 250,000 people, there were actually 6 coffins, one of which was empty.
This case is empty. This case is supposed to be full!
That coffin was supposed to symbolize the burial of communism itself. That was a gutsy move in a country still largely controlled by the Communist Party. Symbolically killing communism was cute, but in order to do it for real, Nemeth needed 3 things: enthusiastic support from the West, support from the reform-minded Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, and a lever to push the entire communist bloc off balance. After meeting Gorby in Moscow and getting his commitment to let Hungarians control their own destiny, Nemeth proceeded with the next step of his brilliant plan. He punched a hole in the electric fence, the infamous Iron Curtain.
An iron curtain has descended across the continent
That divided Hungary and Austria. Claiming that the system was too expensive to maintain, he announced that it would be abandoned. The news was an instant sensation, with pictures of Hungarian soldiers cutting the Iron Curtain becoming truly iconic all over the world. While this was the first tear in the Iron Curtain, it really did not amount to much, since the vast majority of Eastern Europe could not simply pack up and move to the west. There was, however, one exception: East Germany. West Germans were ready to grant an automatic citizenship to any East German. So, unlike Czechs, Hungarians, or Russians, East Germans had a clear path to start their new lives in the West. The plot of the next episode in the Hungarian drama involved a secret negotiation with the governments of the West Germany and Austria to facilitate a mass exodus of Eastern Germans from Hungary to the West. See, each summer, thousands of East Germans drove their Trabants, basically mopeds that look deceivingly like a real car, to the beautiful Lake Balaton in Hungary. This place was the closest that the average East German could get to a Western-style vacation, with halfway decent restaurants, hotels, and nightlife. In the summer of 1989, however, most East Germans who went to Hungary were hoping to avoid the return trip altogether. They were planning to escape since the Iron Curtain in Hungary was no more. The question was, will they be allowed to leave Hungary for the West? Prime Minister Nemeth and his conspirators saw this as a great opportunity to gain publicity and to entice the hesitant and partially frightened East Germans to make a run across the border. Having obtained the full and energetic support from the West German Chancellor, Helmut Kohl, as well as Austrian authorities, Nemeth needed to convince 150,000 or so East Germans residing in makeshift refugee camps in Hungary to cross the border with Austria. And that is when the idea of organizing a pan-European picnic to take place right on the border between Hungary and Austria took shape as a way to celebrate the Hungarian opening in the Iron Curtain. Nemeth saw this picnic as a great opportunity to get East Germans across the Austrian border. The problem was that he could not do it openly, since he was not sure how the other Warsaw Pact countries would react to such a mass exodus. To solve this problem, Hungarian reformers printed and distributed an invitation to the Pan-European picnic to East Germans, while conveniently providing a map of the area, with large warnings stating that East Germans should take care to follow the directions precisely, or run the risk of accidentally venturing into Austrian territory, since the border would be completely open to accommodate this event. East Germans were really digging that danger of ending up in Austria, and over the next 2 weeks, tens of thousands of them lost their way and were promptly assisted by West German authorities, who ferried them to safety. None of these actions escaped the East German leadership, where our old friend Erich Honecker was outraged by this Hungarian betrayal, and his anger made him do something that started the countdown to his demise and the collapse of his wall.
It's the final countdown.
Please join us next time for the third and last installment of our Berlin Wall series. Thank you so much for spending the last 15 minutes with me. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and join us next time on Rebels and Revolutions. So long!